Jose Antonio Rivera and Paula Pascual had 3 sons, Elias, Vicente, and Luis Tomasito. Elias Rivera was a well-off man. He recognized the importance of education and arts and spared no expense in providing his children with the finest opportunity. He was a lawyer and was the first fiscal of Oroqueta. The family story, however, took a poignant turn during the tumultuous period of the Japanese occupation. Elias Rivera, the pillar of support, was no longer present to shield his loved ones from the harsh realities of wartime life. Jose Antonio Rivera, Filipino hero. The following narrative is a personal account shared by his sister, Maria Natividad, who lived through the turbulent period of the Japanese War. 1944, Intramuros, Manila, in an apartment of the Rivera family. The Japanese soldiers went to the Rivera residence looking for Jose Antonio. Since he cannot be found, they tried to take Fausta, but Rica volunteered to take the place of her mother. The Japanese soldiers brought Rica to Fort Santiago. There she served as a lavandera and a dishwasher. The Japanese army persisted in pursuing to capture Jose Antonio, so they went back to the Rivera residence days after Rica was taken and insisted on taking Fausta, but Loling volunteered herself in place of her mother. However, the Japanese soldiers refused, so both Fausta and Loling were taken to the Japanese camp in now FEU. Both served as lavandera and cooks for the Japanese. Each morning, the Japanese subjected Fausta to interrogation and whipped her to compel her to reveal Antonio's whereabouts. Upon receiving the distressing news of his mother and sister's capture, Antonio chose to surrender himself to the Japanese authorities. During that time, streets became grim stages where captives were showcased, serving as a warning to those unwilling to pledge allegiance to the Japanese forces. Antonio, with handcuffed hands, walked the streets of Intramuros, surrounded by Japanese soldiers. Behind them were a few Filipino with bayong on their heads, called the Makapili. Meanwhile, in Malate, Manila, Maria Montserrat, Maria Inocencia, Fausta Elisa, Maria Iluminada, Elias Jr., and Maria Teresa were left in the Rivera apartment at that time, all of whom were under the age of 16. Sadness and fear filled their young hearts. They were advised to close all their doors and windows as Antonio passed by their house. Peeping through the holes of the Capiz windows, they saw their brother looked up at the window as he walked with the Japanese soldiers. Tears of pity for their brother filled their eyes. For fear of their own safety, they decided to leave the apartment. In a cariton, they brought a few clothes, banig, and some things that they could carry, and went to their uncle's house in Quiapo, near the Pasig River. He was their mother's cousin. There they stayed till the release of their mother and sister. Antonio was brought to Fort Santiago. There he met his sister Rica. Sometimes, Rica would bring food for Antonio at his cell. Antonio Rivera stayed in Fort Santiago until the liberation. When the Americans started bombing Intramuros, the Japanese randomly shot all the prisoners in Fort Santiago, including Jose Antonio. It is important to take a moment and pay tribute to Jose Antonio's bravery and devotion to his family. His fight for our freedom and willingness to sacrifice his own freedom for his loved ones will never be